Hi everyone, Ramesh here. Welcome to Spring Boot CRUD web application with Thymeleaf. We are going to develop a Spring MVC web application using Spring Boot, Thymeleaf, Spring MVC, Spring Data JPA, Hibernate and MySQL database. So we are going to use this technology stack to develop our Spring Boot CRUD web application. Alright. So here is our high level project requirement. We are going to create a web application for employee management system where users should able to perform all these operations. So users should able to get all the employees, users should able to add a new employee, users should able to update an existing employee, and users should able to delete an existing employee. So these are the features that we are going to develop in this video tutorial. Alright, so let me show you what exactly we are going to develop in this video tutorial. We are going to develop employee management system application, and look at here, these are the basic CRUD operations that we are going to implement in this video tutorial. We are going to implement add employee, update, delete and list employee features. So let me add a new employee here. So first name is John, last name Sina, employee email john@gmail.com, and hit save employee button. So look at here, new employee is added to the employee list, and similarly I can able to update existing employee. So let us say it's a John, and let's update it John123, and let's update email address from john@gmail.com to sina@gmail.com and hit update employee button. So look at here, I can able to update an existing employee. Similarly I can able to delete the existing employee. So look at here, this employee I'm going to delete. Click on delete button. So look at here, John123 employee is deleted from the employee list. Alright, so this is the CRUD operations that we are going to implement in this video tutorial. Alright, great. Now let's take a look at our big picture. So we'll start with our web browser, and then request first will come to the employee controller, and then it sends to the employee service, and it goes to the employee repository, and then it hits to the database. Then the employee repository will retrieve data from MySQL database, and again the data will be sent to the employee service and then employee controller. Employee controller will basically return a view, that is the Thymeleaf template, and that template will be again rendered on a web browser. This is the typical flow in our Spring MVC web application. This is the high level architecture of our Spring Boot project. So probably you know about front end and back end, right? At a front end we are going to use Thymeleaf template engine to develop a view layer, and at the back end we are going to develop 3-layer architecture: controller layer, service layer and DAO layer. At a controller layer we are going to use Spring MVC to develop a Spring MVC controllers which will handle all the HTTP requests. And employee service, so basically we keep all business logic in employee service, and we do a transaction related stuff in employee service. And the employee repository, basically it has a responsibility to establish a connection with a MySQL database, and it exposes CRUD database operations for employee entity. Okay, and at a database we are going to use MySQL database. So this is a typical application architecture. Now let's have a look into the tools and technologies that we'll be using. We'll use Eclipse IDE to develop our Spring MVC web application. We use Spring Boot 2.2.6. This is the latest release of Spring Boot as of now, and Spring Boot 2 internally uses Spring Framework 5. We are going to use Maven for dependency management and project build tool, and we're going to use Java 8. We're going to use Spring Data JPA to develop our repository or DAO layer. Spring Data JPA internally uses Hibernate as a default JPA provider, and we use Spring Data JPA basically to reduce a boilerplate code that is required to develop a DAO layer. And we're going to use Thymeleaf to develop our view layer. Alright, I'm in Eclipse STS ID Let's go ahead and let's quickly create and set up our Spring Boot project. Go to the file and new, and then choose Spring Starter project. You can also use Spring Initializer website. You can access from the web browser. So this is a Spring Initializer website through which we can quickly create and bootstrap Spring based projects. Alright, you can use either Spring Initializer from the browser, or you can use Spring Initializer in a Spring Toolsuite IDE. And Spring Initializer is integrated in Spring Toolsuite IDE, so I am going to use Spring Initializer to quickly create and set up our Spring Boot project. Alright, here let's give name to our project as Spring Boot Thymeleaf CRUD web app. So we are going to develop a simple real-time project using Spring Boot and Thymeleaf, and we are going to use Maven. So let's keep type as a Maven here. I'm going to use packaging as a jar and keep Java version 8, language Java, and group. I'm going to give group ID as net.javaguides, but you can give any group ID that you want, and the artifact ID is going to be our project name. Let's keep version and description as it is, and package as net.javaguides.springboot. You can give any package name that you want. Alright, once you are happy with the details, click on next. And let's keep Spring Boot version as it is, because this is a stable and latest release of Spring Boot version, and this is recommended by Spring Boot team. So let's keep this Spring Boot version as it is, and this is the latest and stable version of Spring Boot as of now. And here we're gonna select Spring Boot starter dependencies. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's pick up Spring Boot web starter dependency. Alright, Spring web dependency. Okay, so we use Spring web dependency to build web applications as well as RESTful applications, and Spring web starter dependency internally provides Apache Tomcat as embedded default servlet container. Okay, and let's go and let's pick this dependency, and we're gonna use Spring Data JPA. Alright, to develop a repository layer or a DAO layer, we're going to use Spring Data JPA, and Spring Data JPA internally uses Hibernate as a JPA provider. So basically we use Spring Data JPA to reduce a boilerplate code that is required to develop a DAO layer. And we're going to use Thymeleaf template engine. So let's type Thymeleaf. So we use Thymeleaf to develop our view layer. Alright, and we're going to use MySQL database. So let's go ahead and let's choose MySQL JDBC driver. Let's type MySQL here. So this is a MySQL JDBC driver, and we also use Spring Boot dev tools. Okay, so this is the cool feature provided by Spring Boot. So whenever we do some changes in our Spring Boot project, so this dependency will automatically restart the application. So that we'll see in a application development. Alright, so these are the dependencies that we need to develop our real-time project using Spring Boot and Thymeleaf. Alright, let's hit finish. So this will create a Spring Boot project in Eclipse STS IDE. Alright, look at here, this is the default structure of Spring Boot project. So whenever we create a Spring Boot project using Spring Initializer, then this is the default structure of our Spring Boot project. This is the main entry point class of our Spring Boot project, and look at here, this is a Spring Boot application annotation. This annotation triggers auto configurations and component scanning. Alright, and this annotation is equivalent to declaring add configuration, add enable auto configuration, and add component scan annotation. So instead of adding these three annotations, we can simply add Spring Boot application to trigger auto configurations in Spring Boot project. Okay, this is the application.property file where we configure all the application level properties, and this is a templates folder under resource directory. So under templates folder we keep all the Thymeleaf templates. This is the pom.xml file where we keep all the Maven dependencies and plugins and build related things. Alright, now what we'll do, we'll create our packaging structure. So let's go ahead and let's create a packaging structure as per our project architecture. Alright, so we're gonna see how to create 3-layer architecture. For that, we create a package. First we create a controller package. Next we create a service package where we keep all the service classes, and under controller package we keep all the Spring MVC controllers. Okay, let's go ahead and let's create one more package. Let's name it as repository. Under repository we keep all the JPA repositories. Let's go ahead and let's create one more package and let's name it as model. So we keep all the domain models under model package. Okay, so this is the typical packaging structure for our Spring MVC web application. Now we have created a project packaging structure. Now we will configure a database. Open the application.properties file, and here we configure MySQL database. So look at here, this is the JDBC URL for MySQL database, and we're gonna use demo as our database, and this is a username and password, and this is a MySQL dilate for Hibernate, and this is a property which we can use to automatically create a tables in a database. And we also enable debug logs for Hibernate. Okay, so this will simply print logs onto the console. So this is the database configuration in application.properties file. Now we'll create a database in MySQL database. Open MySQL workbench, and here just type the statement create database, and let's give our database name as demo. You can give any database name that you want and just execute this statement. This will create a demo project in MySQL workbench. Okay, so MySQL workbench is a client which we can use to connect to the MySQL server. Alright, this is one of the popular MySQL client. Alright, once we configure MySQL database and once we create a MySQL database, then what we'll do, we'll create a JPA entity. Right, we need to create a domain model, right? So go to the model package, new, and then choose class. Let's give a domain model name as employee, and let's create few fields: private long ID, private string first name, private string last name, and then private string email. Alright, let's go ahead and let's quickly create a getSetter methods to access these private fields. Great, now we have a simple Java class. Let's make this Java class as a JPA entity by using JPA annotation. Let's use entity annotation here. Let's also use a table annotation to provide table details. Let's give a table name as employees. You can also give a schema name by using schema attribute here. Alright, so look at here, this is a schema attribute. You can give a schema name here, but we can skip as of now. Let's use @id annotation to provide a primary key of our entity. Let's use @generated_value annotation to provide a primary key generation strategy. Alright, strategy generation type dot add entity. Okay, and here we can use @column annotation to map a column name to this field. Okay, so here we can use name first underscore name. Let's go ahead and let's copy this, and we can also give a name to the last name, like last underscore name and email. Okay, so if you don't give at column annotation, then by default the column name is the field name. All right, and if you don't specify at table annotation here, then by default the table name is the class name. Okay, this is a very simple JPA entity. All right, now what we have done, we have created a Spring Boot project, we have created a packaging structure, and we have configured MySQL database in application.properties, and we have also created a database, and we have created a JPA entity. Now we're going to implement list employee feature step by step. Okay, first we'll start with a repository. So let's go ahead and let's right click on a repository, new, and then choose interface, and let's give a name as employee repository. All right, and let's extend this interface to JPA repository. Okay, so basically JPA repository exposes CRUD database operations for employee entity. Okay, and here ID is nothing but the type of the primary key. Let's annotate this interface with at repository annotation. All right, great. Now we can able to get a CRUD database operations for employee entity by using JPA repository. Now let's go ahead and let's create a service. Right click, new, and choose class. So first we'll create a interface. Right click, new, and then choose interface. Let's name it as employee service. Okay, and let's quickly create a method, list of employees. Right, let's call this method as get all employees. Okay, it's pretty simple method. Now we're gonna create a class which implements this interface. Let's name this class as employee service IMPL. Okay, and this class will implement employee service interface, and then we're gonna override the method here, and we simply first auto wire employee repository. Okay, so here we are just injecting employee repository using at auto wire annotation. Now here we return a list of employees, right? So return employee repository dot find all method. So find all method basically returns a list of employees. So look at the return type of find all method. Okay, great. Now we have created get all employees method. All right, so this will basically return a list of employees to the controller. Now I'm going to create a Spring MVC controller. Right click, new, and create a class. Let's name it as employee controller. Let's annotate this employee controller with @controller annotation. So what we'll do, we'll create a method handler which will display list of employees. All right, and here I'm just going to write the comment display list of employees. All right, let's create a method handler public, and we need to supply a list of employees to the view layer. For that we need to use a model here. And let's annotate this method handler with @request mapping annotation. or we can also use @get mapping annotation. Alright, now what we'll do, we'll add data to the model. Let's use @attribute method here. @attributes with key value pair, right? So here I will give list employees, and here I'm gonna call. So before that we need to inject service class, right? Let's use @auto-add annotation, and here just inject employee service. And let's call this employee service here dot get all employees, and here we just return the view name, that is, let's call that is an index. Let's call home Thymeleaf template as an index. Okay, so what we have done, we have retrieved a list of employees, and we have added to the model here, and we just return an index. So this is the Thymeleaf template that we will design right now. So look at here, this is the templates folder under resource directory, and we need to create all Thymeleaf templates under templates folder, because Spring MVC needs a view resolver, right, in order to resolve the views. Whenever Spring Boot finds a Thymeleaf starter dependency on a class path, then it will automatically configure a view resolver for Thymeleaf template engine. So we no need to manually add a view resolver for Thymeleaf template engine. And by default, Spring Boot will pick up Thymeleaf templates from templates folder. Hence we need to create Thymeleaf templates under templates folder. Alright, let's right click on it, new, and then choose HTML file, and here we need to give a name as index. So this is our home page, which will display a list of employees. Let's design Thymeleaf template. So let's replace title with employee management system. So our project name is employee management system, right? And here let's create a div, and let's align this div to the center, align center, and here we create a h1 tag, and here we simply call as employees list, and then we create a table, and then we create a table header. Alright, and this is the table body. Under table header we create a row here, and then here th, and let's call it as employee first name. Alright, so you can start coding with me so that you will get a hands-on experience. And then let's say employee last name. Let's create one more header. This is employee email. Okay, and in a body we create again a row. Let me quickly add Thymeleaf code here. So look at here, we are using Thymeleaf directives here. So here just iterating over a list of employees. So this list employees we got from the controller from here. Okay, and here we just iterate our list employees using Thymeleaf directive, and here we are using Thymeleaf expression to render our employee first name, last name and email. Alright, this is pretty simple Thymeleaf template for home page to render list of employees. Okay, great. Now we have completed end-to-end list employee feature. What else remaining? I think we have done it. So what we'll do, we'll run the application and we'll see the demo. So before that, what I will do, I will insert some records into a database. Okay, so first we'll run the Spring Boot project, then Hibernate will automatically create an employee table in a database, and then we'll insert our employee records. Okay, so in order to run Spring Boot project, go to the main entry point of our class, right click, run as Spring Boot app or Spring Boot project. So they get here the logs. We have basically configured log levels for Hibernate in application.properties file, right? Hence there are a lot of logs are printing on a console here. Oops, we got some error here. Oops, we forgotten to add annotation to the service, I guess. So here basically we need to add @service annotation, and also we need to provide transactional annotation. So we can skip this annotation because Spring Data JPA internally will handle the transactions, so we can skip this annotation. Now what we'll do, we'll run our Spring Boot project once again, Spring Boot app. No errors in our application setup. Now our application is up and running on embedded Tomcat server on port 8080. Now let's go to the browser and let's access this employee list page. In a browser tab, just type localhost:8080. So this will give this will display the page looks like this. So let's open index.xml file here, and we just provide a border for our table, border 1. Okay, and then again refresh. So here you can see we have just provided a border for table. Now what we'll do, we'll add few records to the employee table in a database. Go to the MySQL workbench here, refresh it, and you can see in a demo database employee tables is created. Let's insert few records. Let's apply and finish. Now we have inserted 3 records in an employees table. So basically we insert these records by using add a new employee page that will implement in further videos. Okay, go to the web browser again, refresh it. Yeah, here you can see we can able to see 3 employees just that we have inserted in a employees table, right, in database: Ramesh, Sina, Tony, Stark. Alright, so this is how we have implemented end-to-end employee list feature. Now what we'll do, we'll add some bootstrap CSS and we will style our web page. Now what we'll do, we'll add a bootstrap CSS to the our HTML page. For that we need to add a bootstrap CSS library, right? So what I will do, I will get some bootstrap CSS from the CDN site. So you can copy this link. You can just search for CDN bootstrap, then you can able to get this link. Okay, so instead of downloading and adding to the project, I can use this CDN provided bootstrap CSS file. Okay, now once we have bootstrap CSS file, we can able to add a classes, right? So let's go ahead and let's add some classes, CSS classes to the table here. Class, and this is a table, tables stripped and table responsive. Okay, now let's go to the browser and let's refresh again. Now you can see some changes happened on our web page, right? We have just added Bootstrap CSS classes so that our table looks good, right? So let's go ahead and let's add few more CSS classes and let's make this web page beautiful. What we'll do, we'll add a container here, class container. So this will basically add a div container. Now again refresh, again you can see here, now our web page looks good, right? So we can get this h1 tag here at the top. Remove this align center, this is not required because we have added container here. Now again let's go ahead and let's refresh it. Now our web page looks good, right? Alright, so this is how we have implemented end-to-end list employee feature. Now what we'll do, we'll add a button here through which we can able to add a new employee. Alright, let's first complete backend part. So first what we'll do, we'll create a method. So in a repository we can get a save method, but in a service layer we need to create a save employee method, right? So here I'm gonna call save employee method, and here we need to pass the employee object, right, as a method argument. And in employee service IMPL, let's override this method, and here just call employee repository and then save employee here. Alright, great. Now we have created a save employee method which will save an employee to the database. Now what we'll do, we'll add a link to the index.html page. So look at here, this is the code basically which displays a list of employees, and here we're gonna create a link. This is actually a hyperlink, th:/href. So look at here, this is the Thymeleaf directive, and here we provide @ this is new employee form, something like this. Okay, new employee form, let's call it as a show new employee form. Okay, and here let's say add employee. Okay, so look at here, if you mouse over on this tag, it says undefined attribute name. Okay, so in order to ignore this, what we can do here is we can just add Thymeleaf link here. Okay, now you can see it will identify this attribute now. Okay, localhost 8080. Look at here, we have just added a link. So let me add some Bootstrap CSS so that we can make this hyperlink as a button. So first thing you need to do is just copy. We have already added Bootstrap link here, Bootstrap CSS link, and now what we'll do, we'll just add here Okay, I have just added Bootstrap CSS here. Now let's refresh. Yeah, look at here, add employee button. Okay, now it looks good. Now what we'll do, we'll implement a method handler to handle this request. Let's copy this URL and let's go to the employee controller, and here we'll write the method handler to handle show employee form request. Okay, public and then string. Let's give a method name as show new employee form, and this is get mapping, and here just provide this URL here, and we are going to return some model. So let's get a model object, and here we create an employee object. Okay, so let me add a comment here. So we create a model attribute to bind a form data. So here what I will do, I will add a employee here, and then I will just assign employee to employee. So this is the key and this is the value, and we use this model to bind form data that we'll see a bit later. Now let's go and let's return a view that is new underscore employee. So this is the Thymeleaf template name that we will create a bit later. Okay, now what we have done, we have created a method handler which will handle show new employee form request. So this request comes from index.html page here. Okay, now what we'll do, we'll create a Thymeleaf template from which we can add a new employee. So right click on templates folder, new, and then other, and here choose HTML file. Let's name it as new underscore employee.html. Now let's design this page. Now just replace the title with employee management system, and here let's create a div. Alright, and we will be using Bootstrap CSS, right? For that, what we can do is we can just copy from the index.html. So this is the CDN link for Bootstrap CSS file. Let's add it inside a header. Okay, and here what we'll do, we will add h1. So this is our project name, right? Employee management system, and then here add horizontal line here. Okay, and then h2. So let's call it as save employee. Alright, now what we'll do, we'll create a form. So this is the action, th:\action, and again, in order to avoid this undefined attribute name error or warning, what we can do is we can just copy this and we can paste it here. Okay, and action is you can give a URL like this, save employee. Alright, so we'll implement a method handler for this bit later. Again, th object, this is employee, and here we have a method, right? Method is a post. Okay, so we can remove this, and this is the action. This is basically a Thymeleaf tag, and we can assign action to hash here. Alright, now let's create a input fields. Input is type is text, th, and this is field. Look at here the important part, syntax, first name. So here we use star curly braces to refer attribute of the employee object. So first name is attribute of employee object, right? So to access property of employee object, we're gonna use syntax like this. Okay, understood? And let's add a placeholder here. Let's call it as employee first name, and let's add a bootstrap CSS form control and column 4. Okay, let me format it. Okay, let me quickly copy this and let's do it for other fields. And this is for last name, and this is for email. Okay, it's pretty simple. And let's also change placeholder, employee last name, and this is employee email. Great. Now let's add a submit button here. Type submit, and then add some bootstrap CSS here, and then let's call it as save employee. Alright, great. Now we will write a method handler to handle this request. Okay, save employee request. Let me just copy this link, again go to the controller, that is employee controller, and here just type public string save employee. Okay, and let's use add post mapping annotation here, post mapping, and here we will provide a save employee. Okay, now we need to handle a form data, right? For that we are going to use add model attribute annotation here. So here is the employee, so all the form data will be binded to the employee. Now let's get this employee here, employee. Alright, now what we'll do, we'll save employee to the database, save employee to database. For that we're going to call employee service and then save employee, and here we just redirect. So here we just redirect to the home page here. Okay, so this completes our end-to-end add employee feature. So let me recap the steps. So first we completed the backend part by adding this method, save employee method, to the employee service and employee service IMPL. Next we have added a button here inside a index.html page, and then we have added method handler to handle this request, that is show new employee form here inside employee controller. Alright, next we have created a new employee Thymeleaf template, and we have designed this Thymeleaf template, and look at here the form action save employee, and we have written a method handler to handle this save employee request inside an employee controller here. Okay, so this is pretty simple flow. Now what we'll do, we'll run the Spring Boot project. So we have already, the project is already running. Now what we can do is we can access a link from the browser. So in the browser, just refresh it and click on add employee. Oops, we got some error here. New employee.html. So look at here the exception. The exception is we have given an invalid expression for Thymeleaf directive. Okay, so look at here in our object attribute we have given a value like this. This is not a valid expression. We need to provide syntax like this. Okay, save it and again refresh. Now you can able to get the add new employee page. Alright, so here just type first name Ramesh and last name Portare and email ramesh@gmail.com. hit save employee button. Great. So look at here, new user is added. Let me add one more employee. Let's call it as admin @gmail.com. hit save employee button. So look at here, admin employee is added to the list. Alright, basically we add one more column over here and we add update employee button correspond to each employee. Okay, great. So first we need to change a backend part and then we will move to the front end part. So first let us verify what are the changes required at a backend and then we'll move to the front end. So let's begin with the repository. At the repository we no need to change anything because JPA repository exposes CRUD database operations. And let's see in a employee service. So here basically we need to add a get employee by ID method to retrieve an employee, and this employee basically we pre-populated on a web page for editing, right? So let's go and let's create a method here. Let's call it as get employee by ID and let's pass long ID here, and let's implement this method in an employee service employee class. Okay, this is the optional. So find by ID basically returns an optional object. So here we need to get optional here, employee repository dot find by ID. Here we need to pass the ID. Okay, and here what we will do, we'll declare an employee object. Okay, and what we will do, we will get an employee from the optional. Optional provides is present method. So if it is present, then what we will do is simply get an employee from the optional dot get. If it is not present, then what we'll do, we'll simply throw the exception. Throw new runtime exception. Let's call it as, let's give a user defined message here, employee now not found for ID. Let's mention ID here and simply return the employee. Alright, great. Now we have created a get employee by ID method, and this method we will call from the controller. Okay, now what we will do, we will add a button to the index.html page. So look at here the UI. We have 3 columns, right? Employee first name, employee last name, employee email. Okay, and what we'll do, we'll add one more column. Let us say actions, and here we'll add a update button. Let me quickly write the code here. So here we have given a hyperlink. So this is the link Basically once we click on update button, then this will navigate to the show form for update method handler. So we will provide a method handler for this link, and look at here, we are just retrieving a employee ID, and basically this employee ID will be plugged in this ID. Okay, so this is the syntax for getting binding ID in Thymeleaf, and this is the bootstrap CSS class. Okay, now save it and go to the browser again and refresh. So look at here, update button is added. Okay, now what we will do, we'll add a method handler in controller to handle this request. Open employee controller. Over here we're gonna write a method handler to handle this request. Show form for update request. Okay, so let's create a method public string, and let's give a method name as show form for update, and let's annotate this method with @get mapping annotation, and this is the request, right? And what we'll do, we'll get a path variable. So this is basically ID that we bind here. Okay, so basically this employee ID is replaced here, and this ID will be available in here. And to bind this ID, what we'll do, we'll use @path variable annotation. So this ID will be bind to this parameter. Okay, one more thing is we need to get a model. So we basically add data to the model, and then we pass this model to the template. So let me write the comment here, get employee from the service, employee equals to employee service, and then call get employee by ID, pass the ID here. And what we'll do, we'll simply, so here we set a employee object to a model to pre-populate the form data. Okay, so here call the model dot add attribute, and then here employee, and pass employee object to the add attribute as a value here, and then here we simply return update underscore employee. Alright, so this is the view that we are returning. Okay, great. So we basically created a method handler to handle show form for update request, and next step is we need to create update underscore employee Thymeleaf template, and then this employee object will be pre-populated in this form. So let's go ahead and let's create a HTML page. Let's name it as update underscore employee.html. So basically this is a Thymeleaf template. Now here what we'll do, we'll design update employee page. Alright, so one more important thing here is you can also use new underscore employee.html page. So you can use a single page to handle save employee and update employee features. Okay, but for simplicity I am going to create a new HTML page over here for updating employee, so that we can simplify this one. So you can also create a single page. This will handle both save employee and update employee feature. So what you need to do here is you need to just add a hidden input field which will pass ID to the controller, and that's it. Okay, so it's almost similar. So what I will do, I will just copy this code from the new underscore employee.html page, and I will add to the update underscore employee.html page over here. So I will just make some changes. Instead of save, I will say update employee. Okay, it's gonna almost similar. So just remove the placeholder. Let's call it as update employee. Okay, so look at here, this is a form and this is at symbol. It basically reference to the context path of our application, and this is the save employee. So this request basically handled in a controller. So look at here, we are using existing save employee method handler which we have implemented in previous video, and then this is the employee object. So this object basically we get from the here, okay, from the controller here, okay, model dot attribute. And next, so look at here, this is important. So this is the syntax to refer to the property of the employee object. So basically remember, when this page loaded first time, then they will call getters method, okay, and then by using getters method they will populate the data in a input field. Okay, so this is very important. So remember, whenever the first time this page will loaded, then this will call a getter method to get a data, and that will be pre-populated on each input field. Okay, understood? It's pretty simple, nothing fancy, and it's similar to new employee. Here we need to just add a hidden field over here. Let me quickly add here. Okay, nothing fancy. And look at here, this actually shows undefined attribute name. So to avoid this warning, we just add a Thymeleaf link over here inside a HTML element. Okay, great. Now what we will do, we will test this update employee feature. So one more thing is, we haven't added a bootstrap CSS file over here. So let's copy this bootstrap CSS file from the, and here just paste it inside a header, and let's also change the title and let's call it as employee management system. So this is our application name, right? Now let's go to the browser. So from browser, refresh it. Now what we'll do, we'll update our employee. So let's employ this, let's update this employee Sanju Pawar. Hit update, and then I will say from Sanju to, I will call it as Sanjay 123 and Pawar 123 and Sanju 123 @gmail.com. Hit update employee. So look at here, the employee is successfully updated. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's update one more employee. Let's update this one, Ramesh SS. So let's remove this Ramesh and let's say Ram, and let's also change the email ID. Hit update employee. So look at here, this employee is updated. Alright, so we have successfully implemented update employee feature. So let's see what are the features that we have implemented so far. We have implemented employee list feature and add employee feature and update employee feature. So let's go ahead and let's add an employee here. Let's say Ramesh Fadare and Ramesh @gmail.com and hit save employee button. So look at here, we have added employee. Now let's go and let's update the employee. Let us change from Ramesh to John, Fadare to Sina. Okay, and email address sina@gmail.com and hit update employee button. So look at here, the Ramesh employee is updated. So these are the features we have implemented so far. Now what we'll do, we'll implement delete employee feature. So just follow the steps that I am doing right now. So first step is we need to add a delete button, right? So look at here, beside update button we need to add over here a delete button, so that we can able to delete a corresponding employee. Okay, great. Now in the index.html, just copy this hyperlink and paste it here. So this is almost similar to update button. So here just change a text delete and then we'll change the bootstrap CSS class from primary to danger. Save it, go to the browser, refresh the URL. So look at here, delete button is added successfully. So this is the first step. Now second step is we need to provide a method handler to handle delete request, right? So let's go ahead and let's implement a method handler. So before that, look at here, this is the delete request. So let's change it and delete employee. Okay, and look at here this ID. So basically we get a employee ID from the employee object and we plug in a ID. So this is the syntax to bind the ID in a Thymeleaf. And look at here, add symbol. So add symbol basically represents a context path of our application. Okay, so this is the delete button. Now what we'll do, we'll create a method handler to handle a delete employee request. It's pretty simple. Go to the employee controller over here and let's simply create a method, public string, and method name is delete employee, and let's use @get mapping annotation. So this is not a REST API to use @delete mapping. So this is the web application, so simply use get mapping annotation over here. And here we need to basically pass ID, right? So ID we need to pass as a path variable. So here we need to provide ID like this, and we use @path variable annotation to bind path value to the variable here. This is value is going to be ID and then long ID. Okay, great. Now here what we'll do, we'll call a delete method from the service. So call delete employee method. Okay, so before moving further, what we'll do, we'll create a method delete employee by ID method inside a employee service. Okay, so open employee service interface, and here we're gonna create a method delete employee by ID. Okay, and just pass long ID as a parameter and go to the employee service IMPL and let's override this method here. So what we'll do, we'll just call the employee repository and then call delete by ID and pass ID over here. That's it. Okay, and we no need to add the transaction annotation over here because the repository will internally provides a transaction management for all these CRUD database operations. Okay, great. Now what we'll do, we'll call this method from the controller now. So here simply call this dot employee service and then dot delete employee by ID and then pass ID here. Okay, that's it. Now once we delete the employee, we need to redirect to the home page, right? So what I will do, I'll simply redirect to the home page. So home page basically contains a list of employees. So this will redirect to the this method, view home page method. So look at the URL here, slash, right? And we are redirecting to the slash, that is the home page. Alright, so these are the simple steps. So now let's go ahead and let's test our delete employee feature. Now in a browser, let's refresh it, refresh the URL, and now let's hit a delete button. So I'm going to delete John Cena employee. Hit delete. So look at here, John Cena employee is deleted, and now let's delete this one, Ram Jadhav. Alright, so we have successfully deleted the employee. So this is how we have implemented delete employee feature.